9:16 on your Monday morning here on The Morning Show with Jeff and Will. And joining us right now, as she always does, it's Tina Traster from the Rockland County Business Journal, rcbizjournal.com. Good morning, Tina. How are you?
I am well. How is everybody over there?
Doing fine. Thank you very much. What's in the news today?
Okay, today's little talk is called A Tale of Two Letchworths. We all know Letchworth Village was the former home of a psychiatric center that opened in 1911 and more or less shuttered by 1996. And the sprawling, more than 200-acre campus straddled part of the town of Haverstraw and part of the town of Stony Point. Actually, most of it was in Haverstraw.
Right.
After in the mid to late 90s, respectively, both towns acquired those lands. Each built golf courses, and the balance of the land has been in question now for 2 decades, pretty much on both sides. So, and there have been proposals that have come and go. The most high-profile one that didn't work out was on the Haverstraw side, and that's when Legoland came a-calling, and they were sent packing. Now, in this just at this exact time in history, and I would say, in part, it points to the really, really highly pent-up demand for housing. There are 2 proposals, one on each side, one in the town of Haverstraw and one in the town of Stony Point. And where they are similar is that they both involve housing, but where they contrast is in many aspects. And I'm going to take you through a side-by-side comparison of what's going on each side. You ready? Do you have your pencils sharpened?
What's a pencil? Okay. Yes, I'm ready. Yes, I'm ready.
Yes, I'm that old. Okay.
I'm that old too. Come on.
Excellent. I feel less lonely. Right now, okay, there's a proposal in Stony Point that involves the purchase of 31.2 acres. On the Haverstraw side, it is roughly 23 acres. So both very large parcels. The proposal for Stony Point, we've been writing about a lot, and I know that Supervisor Monahan has been discussing it, is from a developer known as Hudson Park Group of Westchester, an experienced developer, who is proposing a multi-generational planned community that includes 170 units for assisted living, condos, 55 apartments, multifamily, 125 units, and townhouses, 55, for a total of 445. On the other side, it is just somewhere between 250 and 300 rental apartments, multifamily. That is on the Haverstraw side. That is with a developer known as B&E Acquisitions of Livingston, New Jersey, and they mostly build in New Jersey, but they do have a development in Pearl River. One of the most, now just to go back to, in terms of public amenities, the Haverstraw developer, B&E, is not proposing any specifically. The Stony Point side development proposal does come with a new town recreation center, a relocated courthouse to the Kirkbride building, 2 reconfigured golf links, and a public walking trail that is likely to include Secor Pond and go around Veterans Memorial Park. So far you can see some of the contrasts. Now, let's talk about the price and how this becomes the sort of thing that gets kind of perverted on Facebook. The price tag on the Stony Point project is $3.1 million, plus an additional $2.1 million for the town recreation center and some of those other added-ons that I mentioned. But it also involves roughly an $8 million remediation cost to take down the 8 existing buildings, which are contaminated with less asbestos and lead. And so if you add that, you're closer to a price tag of about $16 million. Now, the Haverstraw side project, that price tag is, well, the price there is $12 million. However, that development does not require any sort of, actually there are no buildings on the portion of the site that DNE is aiming to build the up to 300 rental units. So, I've seen some of the kind of the misinformation on Facebook. It is not that, the contrast is not 3.1 million versus 12 million. It's closer to 16 million on the Stony Point side versus the 12 million on the Haverstraw side. So that should be noted, and hope that clears up some misunderstandings out there in Facebook world. Another thing that's I guess that's interesting to note is that each of the towns paid approximately the same thing for the land, about $3 million back in the late 90s. And also, one of the very interesting things I think is worth noting here is that both sites have zoning overlays, essentially. Stony Point's overlay allows residential and also a myriad of uses. So the proposal is zoning compliant. The same thing can be said about the site over in Haverstraw, which has been designated an urban renewal plan. But on the Haverstraw side, the town does not have to take this out to any sort of a referendum. They have control over the land under this urban renewal plan. So, as you all know, the proposal for the Stony Point property is the subject of a referendum coming up in the election. The referendum is simply asking residents to give the town board the right to continue negotiating with the developer who has signed a memorandum of understanding with the town on this conceptual plan. Whereas in Haverstraw, town supervisor Howard Phillips can move forward, it seems, without any sort of a public vote or public input. So those are sort of the side-by-side comparisons of these two developments that are being considered simultaneously after both sides, both pieces of land, large pieces of land, have sat fallow for 2 decades. So I think it's a pretty interesting thing for North Rockland. I see it as an opportunity. All of these proposals come with many concerns, and the concerns are legitimate. In the case on the Stony Point side, I mean, that is really already developed. That's a matter of taking buildings down. The Haverstraw side is an empty piece of land, 23 acres, and so it would put development there. I guess the bottom line is that we really do have a housing crisis here and everywhere. This has been a very hot subject in all over the country, and the one thing I would say is that in the case of both of these sites, there is no immediate neighborhood that they are, let's say, changing the character of. You know what I mean? There's not an immediate single-family home neighborhood right in the vicinity of either of these projects, and so in essence, I would say they both seem to be, well sited. Thoughts?
Considering what's going to happen? How are things going to proceed on the Haverstraw side? We've been talking to Stony Point Supervisor Jim Monahan at length on the morning show regarding this project, but I was curious to see if you've heard anything regarding anything from Haverstraw Supervisor Howard Phillips' department, because he hasn't necessarily spoken to us about that, at least on the Haverstraw side.
Now he will.
I guess now we have
good.
some stuff to ask him on Thursday during his segment. But has he spoken?
Welcome.
Yeah,
Thank you. We are eternally grateful for that. Yes, so much. And I was curious to see if you've garnered or if you've gathered any information on how the administration is viewing the purchase, whether it's as enthusiastic as maybe Stony Point Supervisor Jim Monahan's administration is, or maybe they're a little more cautious about it, or how the population of Haverstraw is really treating this as well.
My guess is that today's broadcast is probably a big newsflash to anybody who didn't actually see the story that we published last week on this. We put the story up last week. Basically, this deal has been in the works for a while. We've known about it, but what triggered us to write about it is that last week the town. Actually, they've been negotiating with BNE for 2 years, and the town of Haverstraw last week or the week before amended its urban renewal plan to clear the way to facilitate the $12 million sale to this developer. So that was really the trigger that said to us, yeah, okay, now it is time to report this. Now what happens next is that the town has negotiated a contract with this developer, and so it will start to move forward as they sort things out. Oh, one other thing that I meant to mention is that this developer on this side is looking for a pilot program, which means that they will get tax breaks, whereas on the Stony Point side, that developer is not looking for a pilot program. That's another important point. But going back to your question, the town, it seems, will not be kind of impeded by any sort of a referendum. They're just going to move forward and have talks with, not have talks. Well, they'll continue to work with the developer to see this through. So I guess the bottom line is that right now Mr. Phillips has more freedom than the town board of Stony Point, which had decided, for better or for worse, to put this up for a referendum because of the recent, I guess, controversy over the former proposal that ended in a very narrowly decided defeat.
And the fate of the current one is still up in the air as it is, so we'll see how that one goes. Tina, thank you so much for joining us as always. We'll talk to Howard about that certainly on Thursday, and we'll see where that ends up as well. For more information about Tina's site or if this article in general, just go to rcbizjournal.com and check it out. Thanks so much, Tina, for joining us as always.
Talk to you soon.